The Last Spire is the 10th and final studio album by the British doom metal band Cathedral. Intended by the band as their farewell album, it was released in April 2013 on Rise Above Records and Metal Blade Records. The album was praised for returning the band to its doom roots, with Nick Green of Decibel magazine observing that few bands get to write their own epitaphs in such vivid, exacting terms. Cathedral announced on February 6, 2011, that they would release one final album and then disband. This announcement occurred well prior to the recording of The Last Spire. Lee Dorian described the band's planned retirement as a funeral for the band, which was a long and gratifying process. For Dorian, the announcement enabled the band to record the album without pressure, as it meant that we no longer had anything to prove and could make this album purely on our own terms. Building upon the funeral metaphor, Dorian later stated that the band's decision to plan for its own demise ultimately hasn't made the end as painful as it would have been if we finished without doing an album we were happy with, or we had a massive fight and the band ended for no apparent reason other than that. I think it would have been harder to deal with. But the fact that we've let it evolve into this situation where it is almost like giving ourselves a funeral, I think it's made it a bit easier to bear. The Last Spire returns to a slower, doom-oriented sound akin to the band's debut, Forest of Equilibrium. Dorian explained that the return to Cathedral's roots for its final album was not only intentional, but long anticipated. This The Last Spire is the album I've been waiting to do since the first one. It almost feels like we made our second album last in some respects. We actually recorded a lot more material but decided to sacrifice many of the tracks to make the overall album feel more complete in its nihilism. I don't like happy endings, I never have. According to Dorian, Cathedral's decision to omit those tracks which did not fit with the goal of creating an unhappy ending resulted in 6 or 7 songs which were cut because they all strayed in different directions, and I wanted this album to be a lot more focused than the albums we'd done in recent times. Several of the songs have already appeared, including Vengeance of the Blind Dead on a Decibel magazine flexi disc. An alternate version of the same song appears as a bonus track on the Japanese version of The Last Spire, a track with a shuffle beat titled Evil Wizard, which will appear on a forthcoming Rise Above Records compilation to be released by Record Collector magazine. One unfinished, very epic song that is 30 minutes in length which the band may finish and release as a 12 record, and 4 groovy songs closer to the band's more recent recordings. Ultimately, Dorian acknowledged his comfort with letting The Last Spire stand as Cathedral's legacy. The album was recorded intermittently over several months. Dorian said that, while in the studio, the recording went quickly. However, the band stretched out the time between recording days to give us time to let the songs sit for a bit, and know exactly where to go with them. The interior of the album sleeve features artwork by longtime Cathedral artist Dave Patchett. Dorian, describing the art as climactic, notes that it's not like a usual epic Dave Patchett piece where he does the full spread. It's just one section of the artwork now. It's basically thank you and goodbye, fuck you God or whatever. It's just a scene inside The Last Spire, I suppose, almost like a nativity scene gone wrong. While there is no song on The Last Spire matching the album title, a previously unreleased instrumental track titled The Last Spire appears on Cathedral's 2011 live album, Anniversary. Dorian described his decision to include the track on Anniversary as, "My initial idea for the album, we didn't really have many songs written back then, we had just started thinking about the next album. I already knew that's what the title was going to be for the last album. I thought it would be good to give people some indication of how it would start, just leave a bit of a teaser I suppose, even though when we recorded the Anniversary record, we hadn't announced or decided it was going to be the last ever tour. It was just something I had in my head cause I wanted this last album to be the heaviest we could make it really, without being stupid you know. I wanted to make sure everyone else in the band knew that." The album has received generally favorable reviews according to Metacritic. Most reviews focus on the return to a doom-oriented sound and a reduction in the quirky touches in evidence on Cathedral albums including The Ethereal Mirror and, most recently, The Guessing Game. Christic, writing for Decibel magazine, stated that Cathedral have reined in the purple puffy dragons and their Canterbury scene origins for a honed and toned, almost, mid-tempo thrust. Chris Ward described the album as bringing Cathedral full circle and serving as a bookend to the band's debut. However, he also heard enough of the flavors the band sprinkled into all their albums in between to give it the feel of a eulogy of the band's output. Dean Brown, describing The Last Spire as a true doom record, also credited the band with a masterful understanding of dynamics that integrated Cathedral's signature curveballs. Grayson Curran wrote for Pitchfork that The Last Spire does not feel like a microwaved visitation with the past or some self-obsessed tribute. Rather, these pieces sound like the work of a band hoping to fortify their legacy at the end of their career rather than simply prolong it. Natalie Zed, while criticizing the middle of the album as unwieldy, praised the band for incorporating their musical demise into their very aesthetic. Pop Matters' Frank Lopez departed from most critics with his argument that The Last Spire lacked a pronounced tone of finality suitable for Cathedral's farewell, wishing instead that the band would have exploited their own morose theme a bit more and truly give the piece a sense of final departure. All songs by Lee Dorian and Gary Jennings. Entrance to Hell, 3:07. Pallbearer, 11:38. Cathedral of the Damned, 5:48. Tower of Silence, 6:53. Infestation of Grey Death, 9:01. An Observation, 10:19. The Last Laugh, 0:38. This Body, Thy Tomb, 8:46. Tombs of the Blind Dead, 5:18. Lee Dorian, vocals. Gary Jennings, guitars. Brian Dixon, drums. Scott Carlson, bass. David Moore, Hammond, Moog, Mellotron, synthesizer. Chris Reifert, guest vocals on Cathedral of the Damned. Rosalie Cunningham, backing vocals. Jamie Gomez-Ariano, producer, mixing, engineering, mastering. Lee Dorian, producer. Gaz Jennings, producer. Esther Segarra, photography. Ari Roper, artwork. Dave Patchett, artwork. Donato Panacho, engineering, assistant. Chris Chantler, liner notes. References